to Story History. I'm John. Today, as we get into April, I wanted to talk about the anniversary of the Titanic sinking. Now, for those who may be terminally unaware, the RMS Titanic was a passenger ship that sank on its maiden voyage, the 15th of April, 1912. Now, before it went down, it sent distress signals using its wireless Marconi wireless set. I'd like to talk a little bit about what the two different distress signals the Titanic sent out mean, because I've seen a lot of misinformation out there and thought maybe it's cleared up a little. So, the two operators on the Titanic, Jack Phillips and Harold Bride, uh, upon hearing from the captain that they needed help, they immediately set to work trying to contact other ships. And the first distress signal they sent that night was CQD. Now, a couple of quick things. CQD does not mean come quickly distress or come quickly danger. That's a common misconception. To understand what CQD means, you kind of have to understand how Marconi wireless sets worked and how they actually communicated with each other. Every Marconi set had a three-letter identifier. And this three-letter identifier uh, would tell each individual operator who they were. In the case of the Titanic, her identifier was MGY, Mary Golf Yankee. So when they wanted to communicate with a specific station, they would send that station's three-letter identifier, followed by their own three-letter identifier. So this would let people listening know who the message was sent for and who was sending the message. Fine. That's all fine and good if you know who you're trying to talk to. But in an emergency situation, you don't care. You want somebody, anybody to respond. So, CQD, the CQ part of CQD, simply means attention all stations. And the D does, in fact, stand for distress. So, CQD means attention all stations, distress call. So, that night, Titanic sent CQD MGY, meaning attention all stations, distress call. This is the Titanic. Amateur radio operators still use CQ as a code to mean attention all stations. Side note, and an interesting story, uh, the nickname hams, when referring to amateur radio operators, actually came from this period in history. You see, the spark gap transmitters that were used at this time were pretty simple, and anybody could set up one. The problem was, learning Morse code wasn't quite as easy. It's like learning another language. You can do it, but you'll never be fluent unless you're using it every day. This is the problem that they had. Amateur radio operators weren't very good at sending Morse code. And when you're a professional like Jack Phillips and Harold Bride, and you have to wait for them to finish their communication before you can start yours, it's very frustrating. I mean, they're sitting there listening to some guy chit chat to his best friend. You're trying to get work done. So, professional telegraphers often call these guys ham fisted amateurs. And since wireless telegraphy, a lot like modern texting does, would always shorten things, they just started referring to them as hams. And the nickname stuck. Now, eventually, all the countries that had wireless telegraphy decided they needed a intern a commonly recognized international distress call. So they came together for the International Radio Telegraphic Convention in 1906. And they decided that they would come up with this universal distress call that everyone could know and recognize. And that's the second distress call that the Titanic sent that night. Now, Titanic was not the first ship to use this distress call. Um, Cunard ocean liner RMS Sylvania on the 10th of June 1909 was the first one to generally accepted to have used it. Now, SOS does not stand for Save Our Ship or Save Our Souls. It doesn't even stand for SOS, technically. You see, that International Radio Telegraphic Convention decided that the international distress call would be three dots, three dashes, followed by three more dots. It just so happens that that equates in Morse code to SOS. But it wasn't the only code ever used, which is why they wanted an international one, a common one, so that no matter what you used, Morse code or some private code, everyone would recognize that this was a ship in distress. Now, I'd like to talk a little bit about who I believe is the unsung hero of the Titanic, and that's her chief radio operator, Jack Phillips. Now, it wasn't just that he sat that night at his station, sending out distress calls until a captain relieved him of duty. And that was his job. Rather self-serving one as well, because, well, any closer ship he could get would increase his chances of surviving as well. Now, unfortunately, he didn't survive. But what really makes him the unsung hero of the Titanic, in my opinion, is something that happened a few days before the accident. You see, the wireless telegraphy set aboard the Titanic, which was referred to by the company as the apparatus, was a cutting edge, sophisticated piece of technology. And like all cutting edge, sophisticated pieces of technology, it broke 2 days into the voyage. Now, the Marconi Company's guidelines were clear. Operators like Philip and Bride were not to perform maintenance on the apparatus. That job was reserved for highly trained and highly paid technicians. But Jack Phillips decided he would give it a shot. See, the problem he had was they could receive messages just fine, but the transmitter kept shorting. He worked on it for 2 days, day and a half, 2 days, and finally got it working. So why does that make him the unsung hero of the Titanic? I'd like you to think about it for a minute. Could you imagine for one moment if he had followed his company's policies and not fixed the wireless set? There would have been no CQD that night, no SOS. Nobody would have known anything was wrong with the Titanic until she didn't show up in New York 2 days later. And the 700 or so people in lifeboats in the freezing cold Atlantic, many of whom weren't wearing anything but night clothes, could have frozen to death. Titanic could have been a total loss. And all the stories Titanic enthusiasts love to tell, Benjamin Guggenheim proudly claiming he had dressed up and was prepared to go down as a gentleman, or Ida Strauss getting out of her lifeboat to stand by her doomed husband, they would have never been told. In that way, Jack Phillips, He was the epitome of a wireless telegrapher. He gave a voice to the voiceless, and that's sort of history. Thanks. If you liked the video, give it a like. Comment down below what your favorite Titanic story is, and I'll talk to you guys later.